Hey, thanks so much for finding the video. Do us a favor. If you haven't done so yet, please subscribe. Be sure to leave your comment. We love to interact. Enjoy the video. Mike, what a week for the Saints, man. We knew it was coming, but finally all of this contract movement has started to happen. If there's one that maybe caught people off guard, it was franchise tagging Marcus Williams. So let's start there with your reaction to that decision by the Saints to franchise tag Marcus Williams.
Not I. If you listen to this show,
Yep.
Listen, I've said this for the past couple of weeks. They're going to do what they have to do to keep him. And if you didn't come up with a long-term deal, they were going to tag him. And that's what happened with Marcus. Marcus has sort of had a strange run here with the Saints. It's been a love-hate.
Yeah.
Fans, some members of the media, man, I work with one. Good Lord, he beat the drum on Marcus Williams. Not trying to tell him, listen, I'm just telling you, if you listen well, and if you listen to the coaches and how they talked about Marcus Williams, you get the feeling they really wanted him back here. They felt he was a core player that they wanted to build around on the defensive side of the football, along with Onyemata. They went long-term with DeMario, and we'll see how long that rolls with him, but he's a terrific football player. I think eventually, same sort of thing with Lattimore. But Marcus is a guy that I never forget. Aaron Glenn, when he came on the coaching show one time, and one question to him about Marcus Williams, and he dragged this on for a good 6 minutes. Just the positives of Marcus Williams as a player. And boy, it stuck in my mind. Man, when you got your defensive back coach sort of sticking up for you like that, and then a couple of weeks later, Dennis Allen, almost similar type statements. And my thing is, if I'm doing negotiations with him, I'm saying, hey, guys, come in the room and sit down for a little while. I get the love affair, but let's hold it down to
simmer down now. Simmer down.
Because I got to cut that contract with him a little bit. So, but that didn't really surprise me. I think for me, the bigger surprise today with Jenkins.
Okay.
You're paper thin at corner. And don't give me this malarkey about they got young players behind, like I heard about defensive tackle. Oh, they got young players ready to step up and take that job. Yeah, right. Man, listen, it's unbelievable to hear some of this. But whatever. Jenkins was a really good rent player. You knew you weren't going to have him for 5 years when you picked him up because of his age. But, man, he stepped in and he sort of made a comment in New York, and it kind of carried over. Man, I ain't never been no bench warmer in my life, and I sure ain't starting now. And you got it, man. He took over on one side of the field. He was a good player. You can write what you want now or say what you want now about him. He was a good football player, and he could have started for a lot of teams in this league. He is going to be difficult to replace. So when you cut him loose, I get the financial part of things, and that contract was pretty. A lot of dead presidents printed on paper in front of him. You had to make a move. I always thought maybe it'd be an extension with Jenkins, but apparently that release today tells me that they're going to go in a different direction. That they're going to try to go out and get a veteran corner and also draft a corner very high. You're going to have to do this two ways. You have no depth at all at the cornerback position. Okay, you got a 32-year-old Patrick Robinson. Okay. Tell me the next guy.
P.J. Williams?
Okay, PJ's really your dime safety.
Yeah.
Okay? So
I'm not good with it, Mike. I'm just saying.
Man, my thing is, you have zero depth. So you're going to have to do this two-pronged. You're going to have to get you a veteran corner, and you're going to have to also draft one high. So, man, you're going to be all the names being thrown out there. Patrick Surtain, Caleb Farley, J.C. Horn. Okay, that's probably a really good chance. None of those three are going to be there when they pick. About a month back, I told you, if you're looking for a number 4 corner, it's Greg Newsome from Northwestern. If you want to do a little research on the clear-cut number 4 guy, you can fling me this, Molden and Asante Samuel and everybody else. The clear-cut number 4 guy in this draft class at corner is Newsome. He is a IMG guy, went to Northwestern. He's a really good football player. He didn't play in the SEC, but, man, he is sharp. He's got good size. His recovery speed is outstanding. We saw him work out during the week where he put up some really good times. But that didn't surprise me. He's a former track athlete, so him running well is no shock to me. But just watch him play. He comes up the seam fast to stop the run, and also he's a good cover corner. And so, if you want to watch some film of who you might think might be there, watch Greg Newsome from Northwestern.
Okay.
Man, listen, his daddy didn't play for the Saints. Okay, I get it. His dad didn't play for the Saints, but man, when I look at my cornerback and ratings on how it is, and Surtain is number 1 on the list. Caleb Farley's 2, but man, I'm just telling you, Matt, it is razor close between him and J.C. Horn, okay. And so I suspect you'll see 3 corners go in the top 22. Now, listen, it does happen sometimes. You get a player because teams lie to media and everybody else. Oh, we picked the best player on the board. That's a bunch of horse hockey. You picking, most of the time, a player you have fallen in love with at a need position. Bottom line, that's what you're picking. Especially in the 20s or 30s, you have fallen in love with a player that fills a need, a first-rate need, either 1 or 2 on your list. I'm not saying that JC couldn't fall a little bit, but I would be a little bit surprised in this world of having to match up now. And this is back-to-back draft classes at wide receiver, where in 2020 it was the best draft class of receivers I have ever done in over 30 years. Well, guess what? 2021, they've opened the ropes and they're getting in the ring with them. I mean, it's really close. So you got to match up against these guys. And so cornerback is going to be an issue there. But, there is no doubt. Those top 4 corners, when you look at it, Surtain, Caleb Farley, J.C. Horn, and Newsome, Greg Newsome from Northwestern, those are the top 4. You have your shot at one of those guys. When you pick in round 1, you'll have a shot. I think one of them will be there. I'm not sure about any of the other 3. But I think you'll have to go corner in veteran free agency and also draft one early.
Let's transition, Mike, to – all right, so I do want to ask you about quarterback, which we'll get to. But we were talking about cornerback and how that's a need. We've also seen, of course, Quan's gone, which we expected. Emmanuel Sanders gone, which we kind of expected as well. Where do you see, if you're prioritizing need on this team in free agency and in the draft?
Well, is something else going to fall? Because, certainly there have been a lot of reports about Malcolm Brown. And if he's not here, you need to get you a starting defensive tackle. I'm just telling you, this nothing against Shy Tuttle, Malcolm Roach. They're good in the rotation part of things. Man, listen, you got to win up front. I think it's a big part of this game. You got to win up front. If something happens that you trade Malcolm or he's cut loose, defensive tackle becomes a priority. The Greeks settled this years ago, okay? You get a chance to pick a really talented big dude and a really talented smaller guy, man, give me the big dude every time. It's just the ways of the world. And so it would depend on what else gets done here, but I think there is no doubt in my mind that cornerback, linebacker, if you're just looking at it at the surface of the players today on the team, that's the priority. Either through veteran free agency or the draft or multiple. I can give you Demario Davis. Give me You might like Chase Hansen, but, Chase has been hurt a lot. Craig Robertson, basically a special teams guy. He's a fill-in at that position, and Saloni's going pick on. Quan may come back, but at a much cheaper price, but we're not sure health-wise with Quan. And the Achilles injury is not the career killer like it once was. You can come back from that, but you still are awfully thin there. The same, and as we talked about at corner, those two spots are really, really thin. And if you get rid of Malcolm Brown, okay, tell me all the depth you've got at defensive tackle, and don't sling me Shai Tuttle and Malcolm Roach. Okay, they're good players in the rotation. They're not starting players. Onyemata is a stud football player, big time. Mm-hmm. But you need somebody to team up with him. And so, man, it's much more so on the defensive side of football. Would I like to get a veteran receiver? I think I can, and I think I can get it at a fairly decent price. Sanders was costing you way too much. To a certain extent, there was a disappointment there. That he didn't hit the high notes like maybe we thought he would in this offense.
Yeah.
And, now at his age, his price tag, you had to move on. The other element you got to understand is no matter who's quarterbacking next year in 2021, if it's Winston, if it's Hill, if it's somebody that you're going to try to acquire, you better get yourself a deep element. You better get yourself a guy that can run and get up the field in a flash, because I do think that part of the game is there. And I've heard some ridiculous comments about, under Drew Brees, man, he don't throw the ball deep. They never had the deep receiver. What? You heard of Devery Henderson? You heard of Robert Meacham? No, he could earlier in his career.
Even Brandon Cooks, Mike. You look at 2014.
Man, the one thing with Brandon, you throw him the short stuff and he'll take off. But you're right. He did have a lot of speed to his game. But a lot of what Brandon was short intermediate. Every once in a while you stretched it. With Devery, man, every throw downfield with Devery was kind of the stretch play. Yeah. And Meacham was sort of like that too. So you don't have that. And Deontay you got to be careful with because of the fact he's not a real big guy. And last year when the Saints started to expand his role, what had happened? He got hurt. So he's sort of on the pitch count. Man, I love him as a punt, kick return guy. He can run those jet sweeps well. I want to get him in, 10, 12 plays a game. But I need to find me a guy that can stretch the field, that can get that safety off of running up into the seam, because that's really going to help out your running game. Not so much your passing game, but what did it do for your running game? Because now you're a numbers game, and you smaller on defense. If I stretch you out 3 wide, okay? You can't play a linebacker on those guys. You got to go to nickel. And then you may have to go to dime. So while you get smaller on defense, and I got a guy that can really haul tail upfield, and that's right up Alvin Kamara's alley to have that happen, because you don't take much to spring him loose. So I do see that element, no matter who's the quarterback in 2021. We know it's not going to be Drew, that they are going to try to find themselves a speed element. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean in the rounds 1 or 2, because, again, in this draft class, it is a thick class of receivers. And you may be able to find that guy. You got a couple of compensatory picks at the end of round 3 that you might be able to find that particular guy. It's a new element offensively I think you have to add to the table because of who you're going to have playing quarterback.
Okay, so beautiful transition. There's so many different ways to go to this. I think we all expected an announcement by now from Drew Brees. Is there still a possibility lingering out there, Mike, that they could do a deal with the Seahawks to get Russell Wilson? Would you even still consider that a remote possibility for this year, or is it Jameis bust?
I think I've always said my lean would certainly be to Winston, because I think that's what Sean's thinking. I just listen to what he says, and he isn't he tipping you off so to speak, on what he would want to do. Now, the devil in the details here is with Russell Wilson, on what you would have to give up to get him. The divorce is going to happen, okay? Okay, you can't send out season ticket holders letters, and Russell Wilson's not on that letter, Ed? Come on, what do you think? You talk about petty. That is Pete Carroll petty, okay? Because he calls the shots in Seattle. It's certainly not the owner. I mean, she doesn't know anything about football. She inherited the team from her brother. And if you think John Snyder's telling Pete Carroll something, you can forget that. No, Pete runs the show. And there is certainly more and more each day, Matt. Doesn't it seem that this rift is almost unrepairable?
Oh, yeah.
At this stage. It seems to me that it is so bad that I can't see Russ walking back in that room and doing kumbaya with Pete Carroll. That's not going to happen. The possibility of Russell Wilson getting traded, I say, is still out on the board. Now, the thing is, what are you willing to give up to get him? Because that's always going to be a part of it. It's what you got to give up to acquire him at this stage. And draft choices just won't do it. You're going to have to give up significant players. Also, are you willing to do that? The one thing I'll say about the Saints so far, and I use that term so far, is that haven't they kept the core of this football team together?
Oh, yeah.
They were over $100 million over the cap. And they have maneuvered and maneuvered and maneuvered. Now they're still with $25 million or somewhere in that range left to work with. But doesn't this seem to be a team that has been able to, with all the financial situations and having Kai Harley and Mickey Loomis work overtime, they've been able to work around this and have kept the core players on this football team. Where you see the difference the last couple years, man, you can make a pretty strong argument. That 53-man roster, depth-wise, was as good as anybody's in the NFL. From a depth standpoint, not only your starters, but what you had behind them. Mm-hmm. They had really built up a lot of good depth. This year it'll be younger. You just get the feeling it's going to be younger. You won't be able to go out and spend the money necessarily on that veteran player. You most likely it'll be a younger player. But man, listen, tip of the cap of what they've been able to do to keep that core together. Now, again, something could happen and change that very quickly, but they've done a great job of being able to keep these core players in place. And I do think things are in place to try to get Ryan Ramczyk and Marcus Williams and Lattimore eventually into long-term deals. Man, in that 2017 draft, we just look back and just shake your head of how good, you made out like a bandit in that particular draft class, and how that's been such a structure point for this football team. So, Matt, I can't answer you what's going to happen with Russ. I just don't see him going back in that building with Pete. I just think that something's happened there that is almost unrepairable at this stage. And you're going to be petty about it. Okay, you're trying to get people to buy season tickets, and you don't include Russell Wilson on that paper? Mm-hmm. What does that tell the citizens of Seattle or the people, longtime Seahawks fans, that, listen, we moving on?
Yeah.
That's the indication it would get to me.
Mike, some future potential draft picks will be out on the practice field for LSU here next week as they begin spring football. I'm curious for you, Mike, sort of a spring primer. What position are you? Quarterback's probably obvious, but what position are you most interested in watching this spring from LSU?
Defensive line, I think, is the strength of this football team. Bottom line, I mean, look what you got coming back. Off the edges, with Ali Gay, Andre Anthony, B.J. Ojolari, and that's some talent there. And then you look inside with the two vets, with Glenn Logan, Neil Farrell. I'll make a pretty strong argument toward the end of the year of the defensive lineman, man, Jaqueline Roy. Mm-hmm. He was pretty doggone good. And Wait till Mr. Mason hits the field. I'm interested in that. Because listen, freshman, it's difficult to play. I think he'll be part of the rotation, but man, as an athlete, and I've said this before, I've lived here all my life. He's the best big man athlete I've ever seen from this area.
That's a
Not
mouthful.
the best football player, the best big man athlete. Eric Andelsek was the best big man football player. Man, Eric played both ways, and he was a monster football player at Thibodeau High School. But, man, Mason, as an athlete, a big man athlete, he cuts the mold, so to speak. So, man, you got all that talent. You still with Jacoby and Guillory and how that'll work out with him. I'm interested once you won't see it in the spring, but once the summer comes around, man, when Savion hits there, you talk about a guy with a hot motor who can run the field, and the one thing he can do really, really well, and he can get up the field and rush the quarterback. Go tackle that dude who's got the ball in his hands. Man, and Savion, he has got some skills. So that to me, you won't see Savion in the spring, but the rest of the guys you will. That's a lot of talent.
Mm-hmm.
If you're asking me the most concerned area, it would be probably the safety position because you're awfully thin there.
Yeah.
You're awfully thin there, and you calling on a couple of safeties that are freshmen to come in. And, already certainly the word is, to me, it was no shocker with Maurice Hampton because almost the same time Arik Gilbert decided to leave. There was a lot of talk. Hampton may be right out the door with him.
Yeah.
At that particular point. So, man, you look around, that's not a lot of depth there. Your offensive line, you've got talent. That's the area offensively I want to pay attention to, not say the starting unit because I know what it's going to be, but the ability to develop the young kids behind them. What is this team going to look like offensive line-wise in 2022? Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Liam don't have another year. Rosenthal is not staying here another year. Austin's gone to the NFL. Chason Hines is gone. Ed Ingram's gone. You're going to have basically 5 starters. That, to me, is high priority area to get people work in the spring. Got a lot of young kids who didn't get that opportunity last year. Only a couple practices. So, receivers-wise, you got it. That's going to be fine. Running backs-wise, going to be okay. The quarterback situation is always going to have the spotlight on it, but we've talked about this before. It's Miles' job to lose right now. It's his job. Just listen to the coach.
Yeah.
Okay? He's not writing your story, and he's not doing your sports talk program, but he's telling you Miles is the guy if he's healthy. But so to answer your questions, it would be I'm interested in the defensive line because Ed has talked about this like I've never heard him talk about a defensive line unit before. And I'm talking about from when he was at USC or Miami of Florida or at LSU. He has talked about the talent and the depth on this football team, on that defensive line, and he's really raved about it in his own sort of way. But the positions that I would be concerned about would be the safety position because there's not a lot of numbers there. And secondly, it's the development of the young offensive linemen that somewhere along the line, you're going to have to play some of those guys. I sent him this last year because I did a little bit of research. The most injured position over the last 6 years in college football is
interior line.
Offensive tackle,
yeah.
Offensive guard, 1-2, and it's close. So that's a spot where, man, you get nicked up and you got injuries, and so you better build up some depth there. And you looking, you just got to peak a little bit, and you always worried about the year that you're playing in, but you also take a glimpse at what might be on this offensive line in 2022. I want to see some development of those young offensive linemen.
He's on Twitter at Mike Detillier with us every Thursday. One more for you, Mike, and we can go quickly because we'll make sure we get to the listener questions. But specifically with LSU, and they had the coaches' caravan last night, there's a lot of talk about optimism because of all the guys they return. And the point that I bring up, like if you look at the other side of the coin, well, when you return everybody from a team that isn't very good, are you really better? Where do you fall within that about what should be a realistic expectation based on what we know right now for this team in 2021?
You mean wins-wise?
Yeah, I don't want to hold you to a win total in March.
No,
you know what I mean.
You can hold it to me. It don't really make any difference. My thing about it is this way. I think for most LSU fans, you're disappointed if you don't get the double digits.
That's fair.
Okay, come on.
Is it realistic for this team to think they could win 10 games?
I think it is.
Okay.
Now, I think the key is this. I think, one, the ability to keep Miles Brennan healthy. Because if that happens, that team last year would have looked differently if Miles is healthy throughout the season. It would have been different. I'll argue with anybody about that. Come on, it's tough on a freshman quarterback. You're walking right out of high school, and you're taking snaps, and I mean against grown men. This is grown men. It's not Miles' fault. Your defense sucked. Okay? That's just the truth. Now, LSU fans don't like to hear it, but it's the truth. They played lousy. It wasn't all his fault. Now, he's not Joe Burrow. Who is? Okay?
True.
We may never see another one like him. Now, hopefully we will. Hopefully we'll live long enough, and we'll get that glimpse. And you've got some talent and some depth at the quarterback position. But, Matt, I think that if you can keep Miles healthy and the defensive line plays up to the level that I think Ed believes they can, this team can get to double digits.
Okay.
I really believe that. Now, again, every year it's the same thing. You hear people, well, this is the year Alabama's going to take a plunge. Yeah, right. Yeah, I've been hearing that for, last 7-8 years? Mm-hmm. Ain't took no plunge other than the plunge when you hold up that trophy at the end of the year. But you look across the SEC and the losses at Florida, at Texas A&M, and key parts of Texas A&M, that offensive line, and you're starting quarterback, and you look at Florida, key people, wide receiver, offensive line, quarterback position. Man, those guys are hard to get, Matt, just really hard to get. And you don't play Georgia, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, okay. The biggest game of the year is the first one, because I do think it will tell you a little bit about this football team, and can you get a little bit of confidence? You know who you're going against. Hey, listen, they're not a power team by any stretch of the imagination, but they're going to sling it around on you, and they're going to catch you or try to catch you in some spots where they can make plays, because the one thing on UCLA's team, they got playmakers at wide receiver, and that quarterback's pretty doggone good too. That's a major test for this defense early, and I would rather that happen than 3 games into the season.
Yeah.
Now, you catching it early, and you getting a glimpse a little bit of how well your defense and your coaches have been able to communicate with your defensive players on that thing, which I think was missing, totally missing last year. It seemed to be either my way or the highway. You don't like it, tough. That's just the way we're going to do it. You can't have that. And so my expectations, double digits.
Let's get it, Mike. Here's one via text from Jamie Hodges. Asked Mike, why has the process been so slow with Drew Brees, and when do you expect an announcement?
I have no idea of what's the tap to break on his part. Is he going to wait till after the draft and do it that way? But, I'm convinced he's retired.
Yeah. And
my thing about it is, at your workplace, whoever sent that, you telling everybody you retiring when you retire? When you're going to retire? Or you just telling the people at work?
Well, I'm also not Drew Brees, but
that's true. But listen,
when I'm out, Mike, I'm gone, bro. I'm gone.
I get you. I get you. But come on, it's obvious. And if he retires, he's already given you the gift, hasn't he?
Yeah.
He's restructured that deal.
Yeah.
He's telling you he's gone. He just hasn't officially done it. It's almost like, I got to hear it from his mouth to believe it.
Yeah.
Okay, what more do you want? That's at this stage of the game. But I really don't know. There's only one guy that can tell you. And he isn't speaking. And that's true.
Yeah.
So if you asking me, you asking the wrong cat.
Cliff Nelson asked Mike, more sacks, Ojulari, Gay, or Anthony?
And can I just take a flyer, and I'm going to go with BJ.
Okay. Seth Troost asked Mike, if J.C. Horn is still there at 28, if you're the Saints, do you take him?
Man, do I? Man, listen, even with my bum knee today, I would race from where I'm at to throw that card in. But I'll be honest with you. I do not think J.C. is going to be there.
Okay.
I think he's going to be gone at that point. But if he was, I would not hesitate a second to pick him. He's that good of a player. Now, he's grabby. And, boy, that's the one thing. When you watch him on film, you can get away with that in college. Man, in the NFL, but them flags are thrown at you. He's pulling and tugging on jerseys from start to finish downfield. So, but that, listen, they can teach you out of that. That to me is not a major deal. But yeah, if he's there at 28, I'll pick him. But I don't think he'll be there.
Brian Fletcher asked Mike, do the Saints go after Mercedes Lewis or Tyler Eifert?
Man, Tyler Eifert, isn't he, kind of like a long-term on disability?
Feels like it.
He's always had injuries. Mercedes Lewis is getting up in age. No, they're going to get a veteran tight end, but, man, to me, I think the world of Eifert as a player, but it's availability. You got to be able to play, and he's had this long history of injuries, and Mercedes, he's sort of at the end of the rope, football-wise.
Ask Mike, how many LSU Tigers get picked in the draft? That's from Tom.
Okay, man, right off the top of my head, I'm going to say 8.
Okay. Man.
But I tell you the guy, and I said this a few weeks back to you, guy to watch, and I can hear him almost climbing, almost like steps, is Jabril Cox.
Okay.
And we talked about that a few weeks back. I'm just telling you, everybody's talking about this and that and everything. Cox is prototypical for what you want in the NFL. He can cover.
SaintsReport.com, MikeDetillier.com, and get your M&D draft report. Go to MikeDetillier.com, order it. There's a limited number, so get it now so you're not stuck without one when the draft rolls around. With us every Thursday, Mike D, you're the best, man. We appreciate you as always.
Thank you, Matthew.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact, and be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.